Tiger, we can see you, and we heard you earlier. We're just waiting for, looks like Councilmember Weinberg.
Give a shout out to Joe Simidian. Hello, Joe.
Good to see you all.
Yeah.
Good evening, Supervisor. Happy to have you with us.
Thanks, Anita. Who's the artist behind you? Is that an Altman by any chance?
No, actually, that's a picture from Chicago. That's the water tower in Chicago. You can't really see it. And
Now I can, yeah.
I got that from a street artist in Chicago about 35 years ago. It's one of my favorite things.
It's reminiscent of a piece I got long ago. That was literally the first piece of real art I got for my place, as opposed to a poster at a poster shop. So
yeah, this fits that category for me as well.
Got it. I will be right back. Looking forward to it.
Councilmember Weinberg, we can see you. Can we hear you, please?
Hello, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We can hear you. Thank you.
There's so many boxes.
Perhaps those that are not presenting, we can have the cameras off to eliminate all the boxes. Would the mayor suggest?
I think that would be very helpful if we could limit boxes to the staff, the presenters, and the commission and council. That may be what we have, and we have a lot of folks involved this evening, so.
We do.
Mayor, it looks like we might have our Girl Scout here a couple hours early. Jilly looks like she's here and ready to say the pledge, but that's going to happen later.
Sad to miss it. Gosh, sounds like fun.
City Clerk, can you chat with the family there about that situation?
Sure, I will try to get a hold of him. Yes.
All right, I think we have everyone we need.
Mayor?
Yes, Ms. Houston.
Just housekeeping items about how we get this started. I think there's going to be some introductions and then some people.
Yeah.
And then also, if you want to go over 15 minutes into our closed session, I think we have latitude to So just letting you know. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to call to order the study session on Tuesday, January 11th, Los Altos City Council and Planning Commission joint meeting. We have one item on our agenda. I'd like the city clerk, please, to establish quorum.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Enander. I will call the roll of the council first.
Thank you.
Councilmember Flagger,
Here.
Councilmember Lee Ing,
Here.
Councilmember Weinberg,
Here.
Vice Mayor Meadows,
Here.
and Mayor Enander.
Here.
Thank you. All 5 council members are present. Next, I'll call the Planning Commission. Commissioner Menzinger, Commissioner Roche,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahi,
Here.
Commissioner Merrick, Commissioner Steinle,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Doran,
Here.
and Chairperson Bodnar.
And City Clerk, I see Commissioner Menzinger has joined us.
Okay, Commissioner Menzinger?
You're on mute.
No, they had taken me during the roll.
Okay,
I was just a little slow with my camera.
okay, got her. And Chair Bodnar. So you have a majority, you have 5 commissioners present.
Thank you very much. So the way that, I have a question for the city attorney. The way we had discussed the order of this deviates from the published agenda in that we had discussed having the presentation and questions before public comment. However, it is not,
I just turned it on.
the agenda is not published that way, city attorney.
Sure.
So I would like to know whether we can proceed according to what we had planned and discussed, or if we must follow what's published in the agenda.
You can revise that at this meeting, yes.
Okay, so then what we're going to do, and recognizing that we have a fairly short period of time for this, is we're going to start with a quick staff presentation. And then if there are direct questions from any of us, and they're clarifying questions or factual questions only, then a presentation from the applicant, and then similarly, questions of fact or information. And then we will allow the applicant to, make sure I got this right. We will then take public comments and allow the applicant 5 minutes to comment on anything that they've heard up until that point. And then if the staff has anything more they want to say, they can say it at that point. And then we will make a round robin of the commission and the council on any suggestions. And I want to point out that this is a preliminary, this is a pre-application meeting. We do not have a formal and final application in front of us. So predominantly what we're trying to do tonight is make sure that we all have a full understanding of the project insofar as it has been presented, which may not be the final form, and an opportunity for us to offer our comments and suggestions to aid the applicant in helping us get the best possible project, both for those who will be living here as well as for our community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to staff.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Laura Simpson, the interim planning director for the city, and I'm very pleased to bring forward this evening a staff and applicant presentation on an all affordable development within the city. This is a very early review. This is to allow the council and planning commission opportunities, as the mayor just mentioned, to provide feedback, and they can be incorporated prior to even a preliminary application. So they have not submitted even a preliminary application. This is just a study session with the initial facts about the project. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Radha Hayagreev, who is our project planner, and she has a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, Planning Commission and City Council members. I'm going to share my screen, and I have a brief deck of slides where I just want to walk you through an overview of what we have in front of us for 330 Distill Circle, the project in conversation tonight. Wishing everybody a healthy new year with everything going around in our cities and counties, and everybody, wishing everybody to be safe and healthy. Jumping back into the project, this, as mentioned earlier, is a pre-application study session wherein the agenda for my deck of slides is to just introduce you to a group of the group of people who have more institutional knowledge about the project, a very brief overview of the project itself as it's written in the staff report presented to you. And a bulk of today's discussion will be led by the applicant and the architect team. From the city staff side is Laura, Steve, and myself, the consulting senior planner. And who you see as the applicant team and the county and the developer and the architect, this entire set of people have been part of this project for over a year now, and they would be the go-to person tonight to ask of any detailed questions regarding the project. City staff will be your resource for zoning code and land use and density bonus related questions for tonight. The project is the city's first 100% affordable housing development project. It brings to the city 90 units of residential development. It is 5 stories tall. It has, the first floor has amenities for community room. It's got parking. It's got the lobby and leasing floors. And the upper 4 floors have a mix of residential typologies that include studio 1 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, 2 and 3 bedrooms. Details of this will be handled by the applicant tonight. This is a brief overview of where it's located. What you see on your screen in a highlight of blue is the subject site itself, 330 Distill Circle. To the north, east, and west of the circle of this project site is surrounded by a commercial thoroughfare zone. The project site itself is zoned commercial thoroughfare per Los Altos Municipal Code. To the south of this project site is a specific office administrative district, which is OA zone. And far back west is the residential, single-family residential zone. It doesn't directly abut the boundaries of the subject site in question tonight. General plan conformance for the project is designated thoroughfare commercial. And with the proposal of 100% affordable residential units in thoroughfare commercial, the Los Altos general plan supports and accommodates mixed-use projects and affordable residential projects in this typology of the general plan designation. When you talk about the zoning, commercial thoroughfare, although it reads as it sounds like it was envisioned to be very commercial and retail, but the zoning code allows for multi-story residential project under a conditional use permit as part of the Munich code itself. So the proposal in front of us conforms to both the general plan designation and the zoning code provisions, with specific caveats of it being reviewed under a conditional use permit. So when the applicant goes into a formal proposal, they have to apply for a design review and also apply for a conditional use permit. The project overview in particular is within the half-mile radius of a major transit stop. And this has been vetted by our city attorney team and us as planners as it stands, planners as it stands today. This project, if it qualifies, and when I say if it qualifies, why I say if it qualifies is it has not been formally applied for and requested to be, under the half-mile radius as a formal application, legally speaking. So we are saying that if it qualifies to be within half-mile of the major transit stop, as it is shown in the map in front of you, the project will be entitled for unlimited densities. It would be entitled for 4 concessions, parking reduction, and a height increase. But any other benefits and reductions that is requested by the applicant is under the purview of the City Council's spirit of generosity, and whether they want to review it under those waivers and things like that. This is the brief overview of what is in front of us as staff. And I would like to hand over this presentation to the applicant, or if I need to, we're on standby to answer any questions that the City Council or Commission may have. And I will be stopping to share my screen, and I can answer questions if you have any.
Does anyone have any direct questions for staff, or can we move to the applicant? Seeing no hands, we will move on to the applicant, and thank you for joining us tonight and bringing us this project.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Make sure. Thank you. I got the mute right. Thanks again, City Council, for having us here today. My name is Welton Jordan. I'm with EAH Housing, and we are excited to kind of kick our process off officially, if you will, for a 330 Distal Circle. We have a short agenda today. Again, our goal here is to mostly listen. So we just wanted to do a quick welcome and introduction to the team, community outreach recap, a little bit about the design feedback and how the community outreach informed our design, and then a short conversation on concessions and waivers, and open it up for questions. So here with us today, we have KTGY. In addition to EAH, we have members from our property management and resident services team, KTGY, Jet Landscaping, and we also have members from Office of Supportive Housing and naturally our city partner, City of Los Altos. Just a little bit about EAH Housing. We are one of the largest Bay Area nonprofit affordable housing developers, founded in 1968. We have grown to develop and manage over 200 properties, over 13,000 units, and serve over 25,000 residents daily. And I'll turn it over to Lily for a little bit about KTGY.
Thank you, Welton. Good evening, everyone. Lily Simicella, Director of Design. I'm here and joined with Jessica Music today, our design principal. We are here with KTGY Architecture, Planning, and Interiors. A little bit about KTGY. We also have been deeply rooted in all types of residential design for the last 30 years and designed over 300,000 multifamily units and have expertise in affordable housing at a variety of scales and densities. Our goal is really just to create a place and an affordable home for the residents of Los Altos so they can live in the community that they work in. And I always have a personal goal for each project that I work on. And for this one is just to create an amazing building that we are proud of and really contributes to the neighborhood. I'm happy to be collaborating with EAH here today. One of the first buildings I ever built 18 years ago was with EAH, an affordable building. So with that, we also have our landscape architect here today, Bruce Jett, with his breadth of knowledge and expertise. So thank you for having us, and thank you in advance for your feedback. I'll turn it back to Walton to talk about community outreach.
Thanks, Lily. So again, just to respect everybody's time, but we did want to at least spend a few minutes to have a short recap on our robust outreach. County Office of Supportive Housing, the City of Los Altos, and EAH spent a good part of 2021 discussing this important development with the community. So as you can see here on the slide, in January, the city of Los Altos and the county signed an MOU to build affordable housing at the 330 Distal Circle site. It was subsequently followed by 2 community forums hosted by the city and county OSH. So in between February and August, EAH was brought on as a development partner, and we began our outreach to the community. So that would start with a lot of smaller meetings with community stakeholders. Our first listening session was Community Forum 3 in August, where we had 101 attendees. That was followed by Community Forum 4, where we had a lot more focus on design, had a robust discussion about parking and parking demand. Then that was capped off with an open house when it seems like not too long ago. In September, where we had an outdoor in-person open house where a lot of the council was there. We were able to meet and have more intimate conversations about the development. And that leads us here today to our joint study session. What this shows is just a list of some, but not all, of some of the community stakeholders that we have met with on 330 Distal, and we continue to interact with community members via email and smaller group conversations pretty frequently. And then what these next few slides will show, again, we'll just kind of go through these quickly, are some of the tools that we used via interactive forums. So we use Mentimeter to kind of capture some thoughts from the community about what they like about the city, Distal Circle, and some design elements. So, Steve, you can just kind of skip through these and we can. So these were kind of, when we look at Community Forum 3 and 4 and some of the other sidebar conversations that we have, these were kind of the major reoccurring themes that we've seen. And what Lily will do is she'll dive into kind of where we started and how we addressed a lot of these through the changes in the design from where we started to where we are today. And that also kind of rolls into some of the concessions and waivers that we're pursuing at this time. And I'll turn it back over to Lily. Thank you.
Great. So we'd like you to just orient everybody and kind of have the macro view of our site. Here's a map of why we think 330 Distal Circle is such a great location. Our site is shown in the large pink star, with El Camino just a step away. And you could see that above the pink star, the white text, and shown our neighborhood amenities we have identified. It's really just great assets. So there's the purple dots, and those are the bus lines. We're within 3 bus lines, one of them actually being rapid. The first circle showing a 1/4 mile radius and the second circle showing a 1/2 mile. And really that we just have so many great things around us: the VTA, the bus, the grocery stores, services, schools, parks, restaurants, the list goes on. And then we zoom in into our site, shown in pink with the white dashed line. We are surrounded primarily by office buildings with single family homes to our west. And here you also see our proximity to El Camino in the bottom right corner. And just our main street frontage being Distal Circle. Here we identified the distance from our property line to the surrounding buildings, and the existing landscape buffers are also identified in the kind of green dashed dotted lines. And to further understand our site, we conducted a shadow study early on to really help everyone understand the impact of our project on the surrounding context and to preserve access to daylight to our neighbors. These images, they illustrate the shadows cast from our proposed 5-level building at key times during the year, and basically the summer and winter solstice and the equinox. And our findings showed that we are casting shadow on the surrounding offices at certain times of the year. However, we are not casting shadow on our single-family neighbors to the west, which is the bottom left corner. And just to catch everyone up in the history, we started really with proposing 90 units and 48 parking stalls in a vertical mechanized parking tower, which you see in the upper right corner. Our diagram is such that it was a U shape with a courtyard in the middle, really to have most of our building front distal and to have a protected courtyard for our residents away from the main street. And then since we've had quite a few iterations between that 48 parking stalls and where we are today, we're really happy to say that now in our current proposal, you will see we really put our thinking caps on to incorporate the feedback provided from the community while also addressing the objective design standards, our site constraints, our single family neighbors, all within a 0.87 acre site. So we're happy to get to 90 units and 90 parking stalls. And now that we've kind of oriented everyone, we wanted to go a little bit deeper into some concepts, design concepts and strategies that we set forth really early on that we want to carry forth in the whole design process into construction. So those 4 design strategies are number 1, mechanized parking solution. Number 2, an innovative building with mass timber at the base. Number 3, a building with construction flexibility, and I'll go into that a little bit further, a little bit later on. 4, and most importantly, sustainable design features. In our current design, we were able to fit 90 parking spaces by really lifting the courtyard up to level 2 and filling the back of the building with parking. As you remember from the previous plan that I showed, the vertical parking was the upper right corner. What we did here is we kept the amenity on front along distal in pink. We filled the back with parking. We have a longer queuing line. So really we took that vertical parking tower, made it horizontal. And by making it horizontal, we've decreased the size. So they're 2-level parking with 1-level pit at some locations and with a longer queuing area. And one of the comments that we got is, how do we just have longer queuing area so that it mitigates the amount of queuing in the street? But back one slide, actually. So, but you may ask, what does this mean? What does having the double level parking stackers mean? Well, really, this means in section that our ground level will be 16 feet from floor to floor. And I want to, and this just accommodates for the height of the parking structure, plus any mechanical that we need, plus the 4 ceiling assembly for that level 1 to transition. So another strategy we'd like to bring to the project is construction innovation through the use of mass timber at the ground level amenity space. A lot of thought was put into the organization of the building and the amenity and the services from early on. We wanted to celebrate this amenity along distal, as you see in pink, as you see in the wood. And our idea really was to bring mass timber to create a large, warm, inviting space. There's also other great benefits to mass timber. That being, it's a renewable resource, it has reduced carbon footprint, faster construction, and lighter weight in compared to concrete. And just as I mentioned, just naturally warm. And it felt right in this neighborhood. And then our third strategy is construction flexibility. The building is designed to be modular now, but flexible to be site built over time to work with ever-changing construction costs. Modular units will allow us to build efficiently off-site and reduce the construction time while also reducing the waste. And the project is, but this does mean to the height that we would have a floor-to-floor height of 11 feet instead of 10'3" to accommodate for the modules, which are essentially 6-sided boxes, right? They have a floor and the ceiling, and each box has a floor and a ceiling. So there's a doubling up of that a little bit. The modular boxes would be essentially 9 inches taller than a typical site-built project. And our last and most important strategy we'd like to bring to the project is really just creating a sustainable building and community. Fun fact, the urban built environment is responsible for 75% of annual global greenhouse gas emissions. And buildings alone account for 39% of that. So we are always striving to make an impact on the buildings we design. And really for us, that means incorporating these elements early on and thinking about this as we continue the design. So things such as environmentally preferred materials, such as the mass timber at the base, the landscaping and the courtyard plants, sustainable transportation via bicycle parking, walkability, passive solar shading. So here you see silver fins in the building that we are trying to really shield the sun from the building where we can, where it's hottest, and then solar PV on the roof, just to name a few. And so with that, this is a view from distal and how we envision the building to look like. That wraps up our proposed design to date. Lots to go over. What then I want to go through, very important, is our requested concessions and waivers. So we have 3 concessions and 3 waivers that we'd like to go through. One moment. And so our first concession is setback. Our zoning standard is a 25-foot minimum, and we are proposing a 10-foot setback. So right now, just 25 foot takes away so much area from our units and the amount of net rentable that we provide. We are proposing 10 foot all around the building, 10 foot in front, so that we can really also accommodate. We have a public utility easement that must be clear to sky. Number 2 is a step back. So a step back is required via the objective standards. And the standard is that there's a minimum there's a minimum 10-foot step back, 45 feet above the ground. So that means for us, the 4th and the 5th level would be stepped back. And we're requesting for no setback. No step back. And then our 3rd requested concession is open space. So the requirement is there's a separate requirement for private and common open space. We comply with the common open space. We are requesting for 25 square feet average per unit instead of the 50 that's required. And this is due partly to, I mentioned the 10-foot public utility easement that we have in front of our building, really in order to also provide the private open space on those units on that side. And we originally anticipating cantilevering courtyards, but we realized that we have to be clear to sky. And in order to kind of push back the units to accommodate for that additional private open space area, we would actually have to take away from unit area. Everywhere else except for distal, we are providing that private open space. And along distal, we're providing Juliet balconies. And then on to our requested waivers. We have 3 waivers, one being the quantity of building entrances. So we have what is called 4 primary facades along the building, which are those kind of blue-gray masses that march along, separated by the gray. And so because we have 4 primary facades, we are required to have 4 entrances along the building edge, along Tistel. We are requesting 1 point of entry at the lobby, 1 garage entry, and 1 exit for the multipurpose room. And a little bit of this is just security and visibility, having 1 point of entry and 1 main lobby that everyone goes through, and everyone can kind of, interact in that 1 space. Interior courtyard, partially, the requirement is that it is partially visible from the street and linked to the street by clear accessible path of travel. So as you remember from our old iterations, we've really just lifted our courtyard up to level 2. So there wouldn't be a accessible path to travel to that courtyard space. And then there isn't a visibility. And a little bit of that is just having really those units along distal and making it so that the courtyard and the units are facing away from our single family neighbors. A little bit for privacy for the residents, but also for privacy for our neighbors. And then our 3rd waiver, materials. For multi-story elements, the base of the building shall be defined by distinct material selected from among the following: stone, brick, concrete, CMU, or stucco. And so we're requesting approval of wood as the distinct material. And we think that the intent is achieved. With that, that's the end of our presentations, and we'd love to have questions and feedback.
Great, thank you so much. So again, we're going to kind of do 3 more steps here. One is I'd like to do a round robin of the council and the commissioners. If you have any clarifying questions, please limit yourself to questions. We'll have a separate opportunity to state things that you want to suggest. Then we'll go to public comment. And then the applicant will have a few minutes to respond to any of that. And then we'll again do round robin with comments and concerns, suggestions, whatever, from among both the council and the commission. So I'm going to just arbitrarily call on commissioners. And if you have no questions, just say pass and I'll go on to the next. I'll start with Mr. Steinle.
Thank you. I finally unmuted myself. I had sent a question in earlier concerning the major transit stop. As everybody who's been paying attention to this issue over the last 3 years knows, this is my life. And I'm still not, I would like some clarification. This may not be the moment to do it, but I would like some clarification about how they define the major transit stop, because if it's the stop on Showers, that doesn't cover it. There's insufficient headway between the other 2 lines. And I'm not convinced that you can argue that the 22 and the 522 are somehow different lines. And I know that they rely on this, and I support this project and I want it to work, but I am concerned about that. They may wish to address it quickly, but that's something that I would like to know more about, perhaps not at this time, but however it works.
That is one for the city attorney, and I think we'll
and I'm willing to defer this. I just want to raise that.
Great. Let's have the city attorney prepare a response for you about that to come back to both planning commission and the council.
Yeah.
Mr. Roche.
Pass.
Thank you. Ms. Messinger.
Yeah, just a couple very quick questions. If I, putting on my family-friendly hat, because I love the fact that this has larger apartments for families, is bike access in terms of parking and storage only accessible if you go down the garage entrance or go through the garage entrance? I'm thinking of young children biking home from school having to go into a garage entrance with cars at the same time.
Do we answer now?
Yes, please.
There is access to the bicycle room also through the amenity space.
So they could come in through the lobby building as well?
Yes.
That would be allowed? I'm just thinking of, kids coming back from school, dirty, messy bikes, but okay, it's a fine tuning question. Another thing, if I looked at the drawings right of the shade study, it looked like the courtyard, which will obviously be, I think, a very popular space for families, is in shade a good part of the year. Is that accurate?
I think it actually gets western light a lot of the times, which is great. It's western facing. It would get shade in certain times of the year, maybe early morning, which in March and
In the
September.
summer, it would be sunny.
In the summer, it'd be sunny. And then I would say that maybe in the March and September around noontime, it'd be sunny. And then also in the winter, probably less sun. Almost no sun.
And that's what kind of caught my eye, that in the winter, it might not be a very inviting space for a good part of the day, which would be unfortunate. And finally, is it true that you're planning on vinyl windows I looked on the side elevations?
No, we are providing, I believe the requirement is that no vinyl windows are allowed on distal on the main frontage, but vinyl windows are allowed elsewhere. So our thought is along that main frontage, it either will be some other material, either fiberglass or metal. And then in the back, it would be vinyl for color.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
All right, Mr. Ahi.
No questions.
Thank you. And Ms. Duran.
Sure. One question. I think I missed what you said about balcony space on the interior courtyards.
We will have balconies on the interior courtyard.
Okay.
We are unable to provide balconies along the distal frontage. So we'll only have Juliet balconies along distal.
And have you already chosen a modular provider for your units?
We have not. We are very early on in the process. We are working not so much with a provider, but with a company that works with many different providers. So we are not pigeonholed into one specific company.
Great, thank you.
All right, going to council. I can start with Councilmember Weinberg.
Pass.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee Eng, any questions?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your presentation. I would like to follow up with that question that was just asked. So I'm pleased to hear that your modular provider was not chosen. And I looked at some of and you might have received some of the questions I had, because I had some concerns about the additional footage between each floor. And if a modular provider has not been decided, much of the decision of, I guess, people can dictate the size of the modules they want. So my question is, can you select a module that's 10 feet, let's see, 10 foot, because then that would then allow for if you want your 2 feet of space in between each floor, you can still have a reduced height in building. So I was just wondering, that's my question. I think in respect to our residents and our neighbors and how much more height you are adding, can you consider designing the modules a little shorter?
Great question. And from my understanding, talking to our kind of liaison, she's basically saying, and the concept makes sense too. It's a 6-sided box in order for it to kind of come down the road. And a 6-sided box means, a floor and a ceiling for each module. And that means that when one module is stacked on another module, you have 1 feet from the floor of one, and then the 1 foot for the ceiling of another. And that's very typical. Also, it's like the example I give is, it's like buying a 4x8 piece of plywood. A 4x8 piece of plywood comes by 4x8. If you wanted a 7-foot piece of plywood, it's just that you have to take you'd have to take a foot off. And it's definitely, it's possible. It's, you know, they're in the factories, they could cut a foot off. But from what I understand, is all people who make modular housing really are set up at 11-foot increment. You know, their jigs are set up at 11 foot, their all their pieces are set up for 11 foot. So possible to go down, but that would take away from the ceiling height, not from the floor ceiling assembly.
Thank you. So Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Mayor, and let me quickly thank EAH and all the presenters and for all the work they have done over the last year. As we've seen, this project has come a long way, and I know it wasn't easy. It was a lot of time and effort, especially during a pandemic. So really, thank you so much. I do have a few questions. Let me pick up on what Councilmember Lee Eng was referring to about the height of the building. I'm curious about two things, looking at what I'll refer to as the backside of the building facing the PAMP parking lot. Will there be balconies looking over into that parking lot? And if so, do those balconies go all the way up to the 5th floor?
That's a good question. I get what you're saying now. We have balconies in the inside courtyard, but we do not have balconies at that end leg. A little bit part of our design iterations was to remove the balconies directly facing the single family neighbors on that kind of western corner.
Perfect, thanks, Lily. And then the follow-up to that is still focused on the privacy on that side of the building. I know based on the diagrams, I see trees bordering that area, but are there any plans to have any fences or walls on that backside as well?
That's a good question, likely, but also because we do have now that our level 1 really is parking back there, we will have parking, you know, our garage base down there with screening. So there'll be no units at the ground level. And then actually per the design standards, the sides of our buildings have limited window sizes. So the sill of the window actually also has to be higher. So when you look at the elevation on those sides, we've consciously made the windows, you'll notice them that they're substantially smaller for privacy.
Wonderful, thank you. And then the courtyard I know is now on the 2nd level. How do you envision the courtyard being accessed? Will it be limited to only residents on the property?
Yes, for now.
Okay. And then on the landscaping for the front setback area, and this may just be the shorthand you have in that table you presented, but as part of the concession for the front setback going to the proposed 10 feet, will we also have landscaping in that front setback area? It didn't say, so based on our current code, you would have a bigger front setback area, and it clearly says landscaping. But in your 2nd column next to that, where you're asking for the reduction, it doesn't have that landscaping. So I just wanted to confirm
that. Bruce, would you like to answer, or would you like me to?
Oh, yeah, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you, Lily, and thank you for the question. Yeah, there's landscaping both along the building side of the sidewalk, and then planting in street trees around on the street side as well, right behind the curb, along with other amenities like seating and bike racks and opportunities for art, things like that.
Thank you. And just 2 more questions. One, you know, based on the proposed project, I think you're entitled to 4 concessions. And so I just want to confirm, as of right now, you're only requesting 3 concessions. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then my last question has to do with the roof access. Will the space on the roof be usable space by residents?
We are not anticipating usable space. We want to fill it up with as much PV as possible. So that's where it's going to go, and other equipment as needed.
Great. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Meadows.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for a very helpful presentation. To pick up on the roof question, I only have two questions. The first one is, it looks like from A2.4 that only stairs are going to the roof and not elevators. That probably ties in with your answer to the previous question where it's just going to be equipment up there, but can you confirm that the elevator is or is not going up to the roof?
The elevator will not go up to the roof. There will be an overrun, but.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. Thank you. And then on some of the diagrams where like A4.0, we're looking at some elevations and we're also looking at some floor plans. The floor plans make the facades look very flat, and yet the elevations look very articulated and appear to have, even within each unit, maybe these Juliet balconies, but also some articulation between the four bays. So can you explain which is correct? Is that articulation just sort of a visual thing you've done by putting different colors in there, or are you actually articulating between those bays? I guess if you understand what I'm asking. Yeah.
Certainly. You're right. Right now they're shown as being flat. Really, our next version would be to bump out some of those units. Really, we have 3 feet to play with, and we were kind of creative with that 3 feet that we have. We have 18 inches of building play, and then we have another, or about 18 inches is 2 feet, and then we have another 18 inches or 1 foot for the solar shading device, and that's, I think, what creates that depth that you perceive.
Okay, so it's going to be something in between, less flat than what we're looking at on the floor plan, or it's all exterior protrusions giving us the perspective.
The building plan will be adjusted to be slightly bigger for some of the units to show the building projections.
All right, great. Thank you so much. That's my questions.
And I see Councilmember Liang has her hand up. I apologize. Did you have an additional question, Councilmember?
Yes, I had multiple questions. So sorry.
My apologies.
Thank you. I didn't ask quickly enough. So did you consider flipping it so the driveway is on the left-hand side, so that way it's not so close to El Camino? Because when you talked about concern regarding queuing, this would allow for a longer driveway into the building, as well as opportunities for more space for loading docks and drop-off areas. So can you consider, have you thought of that?
We did at one point. I think really that little corner we were trying to preserve as almost like a plaza. Poor Bruce only has so much public open space along that distal frontage. So our thought there was we have that as a little plaza space, something that he could do something fun in, and so that's why. And then we also just was thinking that entry drive on that kind of northeastern edge, kind of having cars coming in and out further away from the single family residence was better, as a trying to keep the vehicular traffic kind of closer to El Camino and away from the neighbors was our thought. But also there's a turn there, so that's always a little tricky, because it was like there's a turn right there. So the thinking is like people are turning, and then as people are turning this way, they would have to turn into the project. So we can take it into consideration as we bring kind of develop the design further.
Okay. My next question is regarding the plate height of the first floor. I was wondering if you could reduce the plate height. Have you considered reducing the plate height of the first floor? You have a 14-foot.
Yes, and so the 14 foot is really related to how much space we need for the double stackers. Now that we've creatively provided 90 units, but the 90 parking stalls, but really that had to come from something. And so what we did was to lift the plate height higher so we can provide enough room for double stackers, plus mechanical that needs to be there, plus the level 1 floor ceiling assembly. sometimes these mechanical stackers, they really just vary in height. We're trying to accommodate larger stackers. And so, you might save 6 inches or so. You might save some inches if you decide to go another system, but it'd be very difficult because right now it accommodates 2 levels of cars.
Mhm. Okay, and then my other question is, how would I ask? Let's see. Have you considered having the courtyard, flipping the building as well to have the courtyard in the front of the building, so that way the courtyard will have more opportunity for sun and light, and also it wouldn't appear as so much bulk in the front of the building. So flipping the design where the U is towards the back, and then also we never know what the design in the future of the property that's going to be in the back may change too. So I was just wondering, have you considered, flipping that design forward?
Absolutely. Actually, when we first started the design, we tried to look at different configurations and what would fit in the site. In our minds, really, the courtyard was designed to be in the back to be sensitive to the neighbors. Because as soon as we flip that diagram, you have more units facing the single family neighbors and more units staring into them. And then just urban design wise, to have the frontage along Distal and less, a more secure place for the courtyard in that backside. Does that make sense? Because if we flip the diagram, there would be more units right 10 foot away from the property line. And if you're looking at the building, you're going to see more building. And if a little bit is about preserving kind of visual a little bit, in my mind, if the neighbor is looking at the building along that rear edge, if we flip the diagram, there would be more units facing them.
Okay, because you're currently facing a commercial site. So until that design changes or their development changes, right now, that people can.
Councilmember, if you're going to have
more
suggestions, can we do that during our?
Okay, no, I'll save my statement. But thank you for that. That's my questions.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, we should move now to public comment. And I know we're going to start with Supervisor Simidian, who we're thrilled to have with us. And because we are going to be very tight on time, I'm going to ask that people limit themselves to 1 minute, and that it be in, and if you can bring yourself to do this, we know that there is overwhelming support for this project. So if your intention tonight is to say, we really like this project, we know you like this project, we've received lots and lots of letters in support. If you have specific suggestions or concerns, those are the really priority things we want to hear tonight. Although I'm going to let Supervisor Simidian lead, with what I'm sure is going to be an enthusiastic support of the project. So Supervisor Simidian and the rest of you who may want to speak and make suggestions, please raise your hand so the City Clerk can start to queue you up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm going to take your not too subtle hint to keep it under a minute. I just wanted to let you and your colleagues on the council and on the commission and folks in the community know that in as much as this is a partnership between our county and the city, a collaboration, that I am sitting in to hear these comments and to make sure that as the process unfolds, that my office and I are fully informed on how the project is proceeding and that we have the benefit of your thinking and the comments from folks in the community. We've got folks from the county's Office of Supportive Housing on the call as well. We've got somebody from my office, my own staff on the call as well. So if I have to step away to get to another meeting, I hope you will understand. And I hope I came in under a minute. I just want folks to know that we are truly active partners and we're going to get a great project that benefits the entire community. Thank you.
And we are truly, truly grateful and benefit hugely from the participation and involvement of the county staff. And we want to thank them all for being here this evening. So with that said, City Clerk, would you begin calling those whose hands are raised?
Sure. Our first speaker is Salim, followed by David Lowe. Salim.
Hi, yeah. Love the project. Glad to hear the mayor say there's overwhelming support for the project. There definitely has been. I've been to half a dozen meetings just to say how great this project is. It's a little disappointing. This is just the pre-application hearing. There's probably another half a dozen meetings to go. So my comment is really more for the city than the applicant. I hope the city understands that every month of delay is another month that 90 families live without secure housing. You know, families right now with the housing crisis may not know if they can make next month's rent. There are kids in Mountain View who are living in RVs, parents super commuting such long distances that they can't tuck their kids in at night. So we don't know right now who will be served by 330 Distal, and we may never know what they've lived through before they found an anchor at 330 Distal. But what we do know is historically housing has given stability to families who have endured a lot in life. These families are going to be your constituents, and you owe it to them to ensure they're stably housed as soon as possible. This project was eligible under state law to be streamlined. The state did that because there's an urgent need for affordable housing. I hope we can get them the entitlements they need as soon as possible so they can apply for funding. We all need this. We all know this project is amazing, so we should get it done as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Salim.
Our next speaker is David Lowe.
Good evening, council members, planning commissioners. David Lowe speaking on behalf of Destination Home, a public-private partnership dedicated to ending homelessness. We think this is a great proposal at a great location that will really serve as an asset for the entire community. And just wanted to reinforce that this is exactly the type of proposal we need to make a dent in our housing and homelessness crisis. And so we hope you will continue doing all you can to move swiftly to make this a project a reality as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
Our next speaker is Roberta.
Hi, this is Roberta. I thank you, Lily, so much. It really, a lot of my questions were answered during your presentation. I would like to comment on the height. You know, if there's any way to reduce the height by the modules being a little bit lower, or you know, having the first floor be a little bit lower, I think that that is desirable in Los Altos. But I do think the project is amazing. I'm very happy to hear that you're not bringing the elevator up through to the roof, because that adds additional height, you know, which we've experienced before. So I mentioned about why were there 2 feet between each floor, but I think I got those answers. So anything you can do to reduce the height a little bit would help a great deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Our next speaker is Elaine Haight.
Hi, I think that this is an excellent project, and the only problem is that we need to pick up the pace, hold fewer meetings, because everybody knows that each day that goes by, a child is living on the street or in a shelter. So any meeting that you hold is going to keep that child from living indoors in a home, in a real home with her family. And so you just got to pick up the pace, fewer meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haight.
Our next speaker is Ann Polson.
I want to echo what previous speakers have said. It's a wonderful project and we need to get going. We don't need 4 more hearings. Everyone likes this. We can iron these things out, get this expedited, get it approved, and get the people living in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paulson.
Our next speaker is Pierre Bedard.
Hi, thank you. Andrea, my name's Pierre Bedard. I've been a Los Altos resident since 1999. I actually live near the Distal Circle project, and I have to say congratulations. I think it's a good move overall. My only comment is really to City Council, and we, the residents and the people who will be moving in, will need more green space. So I've heard I'm pushing for a park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bedard.
Our next speaker is Janine Valadez.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm a park commissioner, but speaking as a private resident. I am also in huge support of this development and the expedition therein, get it done quickly. I specifically want to speak to the height. I believe the height needs to be at minimum where it is. It should be exactly where it is, if not taller, because that height is a tiny price to pay to get the efficiencies inherent in the modularity, the mechanized parking, the mass timber construction, all the things that I absolutely loved about this design. I wish it didn't have as much parking as it does, but I give the design team great kudos in their ingenuity in retaining the 90 units plus now the 90 spots for parking. Keep the driveway where it is, allow all the concessions and waivers. They're very reasonable. Given the location of this building, it should be a model for future developments. Let's get people in there. And I know that the members of the community will be awesome, and I can't wait to get to know them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valadez.
Our next speaker is John Baer.
There are a number of people who are ceding their time to me.
I'm Lois Baer, and I would cede my time to John Baer.
And then Scott Spielman will also be ceding his time to me. So you'll have to wait for my comment.
Mayor?
Yes?
I believe under our norms, we don't cede time on land use applications.
This is not an application meeting. I think this is a preliminary study session. I think we can allow that.
Okay.
So
I'll unmute Scott Spielman.
Yes, thank you, City Clerk Chalamingos. This is Scott Spielman. I cede my time to John Baer.
okay, do we want to go back to John and give him 3 minutes, please?
Okay, we will do that. Give me just a minute to change the timer, please.
Sorry.
It's okay. Okay, Mr. Baer. Mr. Baer?
You need to unmute me.
You're on.
I'm unmuted. Okay. So obviously there's a lot of support in the community for affordable housing. And I think that's terrific. I do appreciate the fact that EAH Housing has made a number of changes based on input from the community. But there need to be additional changes. Height of this building should and can be reduced by reducing the plate height within each unit, by looking at the 5 feet between the top plate of the building and the roof, as well as looking at ways to reduce the height between each of the modular floors. Right now, the building's 56 feet, bottom to top. I'd love to see that reduced by 10 feet. I would encourage the applicant to flip the building, moving the mass and bulk of the building further away from the residential R1 district, I think should be the primary objective. People are not going to hear the parking. They're going to see the building. They're going to see the light from the building. While I would like to see additional parking, I do understand that there are constraints, but I do believe there needs to be a parking plan as part of this project. How is the parking going to get allocated? What is going to happen to the people who have more cars than there are places to park? There needs to be a plan. I haven't seen one. The building, one of the waivers is for the setbacks. One of the issues with modular construction is, the amount of articulation in this building really is very much more limited than we usually like to see. And I would prefer to see ways to improve the design so it's less of a box. The fact that the applicant is using modular construction should not be the gating factor on design. Lastly, while I appreciate the fact that the applicant has had numerous meetings, most of those have been best described as outward-facing PR, as opposed to meetings to really seek, get, and iterate changes in the design. And I would hope that as the applicant moves to making additional changes and meeting with the public, they spend less time on the PR and more time actually getting input and iterating on some of these design issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Our next speaker is Kelsey.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kelsey Baines with YIMBY Action. We advocate for welcoming communities where everyone can thrive. And I want to start by congratulating Los Altos on your first affordable housing project. It's really exciting and it's very important work. And I'm overwhelmed to hear such community support. I also want to congratulate EAH and the whole team on a great project and lots of outreach. After attending several of these meetings, it's great to see the newer designs. I think the building looks beautiful. I love the height. 5 stories, I think, is more attractive than a shorter building and houses more people comfortably, which is even better. I also really like the color. I like the look of the wood. But more importantly, as others have said, the need is urgent, and I hope that we can move this forward quickly going forward and perhaps address this issue in the housing element process. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Our next speaker is Susan Russell.
Hi, I'm speaking for the League of Women Voters. I assume you have our letter, so I just want to reiterate that we enthusiastically support this development, including the incentives, including the height, and we urge you to proceed with the entitlements ASAP.
Thank you, Ms. Russell.
Our next speaker is Ellen. Oops.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Ellen.
Okay, great. Sorry. My name is Ellen Dolish. I'm a resident in a condo building on 5100 El Camino, which is along Distal Drive. So I'm one of the neighbors of this new residential development. But there's livability issues on the surrounding neighborhood. And I just want to make sure the city of Los Altos and the developers consider that, that this has been a neighborhood, even though it's, commercial, at the same time, mixed use. For example, Distal Drive, I hope there's a plan for parking for the construction vehicles, for the additional parking that the residents are going to need. For also the height, the increased height, I am concerned that it's going to set a precedent for the city of Los Altos to increase the height of other construction around our neighborhood. There's also all the construction on El Camino from Mountain View that is surrounding us. So, the more landscaping, green space, parks, please. We need a park in our neighborhood. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dolick.
Our next speaker is Donna Pulis.
Hello, I'm a resident of Los Altos, very much in favor of this project. I also urge that it be expedited. There have been many meetings. I've attended some before. It's the first time I've spoken, but the big thing is to get it done. I can't imagine we need 4 more community outreach meetings because there have already been so many. So please expedite it. It's excellent. Thank you, EAH. Thank you for the City Council and Planning Commission. Thank you. That's all.
Madam Mayor, I should see no other hands raised.
Thank you, City Clerk. And so I'm going to bring it back to the applicant and ask you if you want to make a closing comment now, or if you'd indulge me and let our council and commissioners make comments and then you get the last word. Does that work for you?
Yes, this is Welton. Sorry, I was having some internet issues, of course. So yes, we would we're at your leisure. So council, and then we will close
Thank
it out.
you very much. All right, then I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask each, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to go in reverse order at the Planning Commission and ask you to summarize quickly your comments, suggestions. I think the good things go without saying, but please, anything that you'd like to see different, changed, or helped in some way would be very helpful. So I'm going to start with Ms. Commissioner Duran.
Sure, thank you. And I appreciate the project that's been brought before us. I don't have any constructive comments to make other than what I'd said before. However, I know the work of EAH and KTGY, and I commend them for their choices of mass timber, their choices of modular, and reworking the parking. And I look forward to seeing the project come back before us.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Ahi.
Sure. So as far as the project's concerned, I'm obviously in support of all the waivers and concessions. I just wanted to quickly go through the architecture. Looking at the distal elevation on, I think it was sheet A0.5 of the packet, I think you can see how similar each bay is with the same material and accents. And I specifically on levels 2 through 5. Which doesn't really create visual interest. And the buildings that have been the most successful have all contained some type of individuality along the facade. So there's always unique moments or spaces on the facade that I don't really see a lot of on that elevation. Also on that same page, you can kind of see the metal solar shades, which I think are a little bit overpowering. I think that when it's utilized on all sides of every window, it becomes more of the dominant feature. And typically with buildings that we've approved, usually the massing or the form is the thing that we want to be dominant and not the accent feature. So I would just take a look at how much that's being used and whether there's a way to solve it with the massing. I watched your presentation from, I think it was last September, and the facade that you had, I think it's actually on page 38 of the PDF. And that rendering was really successful because you had the 5th floor as a different material. You had a lot of articulation happening and balconies that were kind of extending out more. So maybe just take a look at how you got from there to here, because I think there were some things that were really successful there. And then as far as the step back concession, I completely understand the reasoning for that. I think for me, the step back design standard was always about providing a little bit of relief on that highest level so that it's not a drastic move. So I think that if there is a way to reorganize some of the units so that the corners might kind of step in, so that you know, I think that could be explored. That way you get that step back without having to go a full 10 feet, because I understand that that's kind of drastic. And yeah, I have more, but I'll just keep it quick for now. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mensinger.
Unmuted. I'd like to echo a lot of what Commissioner Ahi just talked about. I think some things can be done, even granting the concessions and waivers, to reduce the bulk of the building. And whether it's some kind of step back, whether it's a change in material, I'll leave to the experts. But I think that should be a real goal going forward. The other thing I'd just like to say, please keep in mind the needs of families as you design things, because there will be families living here. There is not great green space that's really accessible. So the courtyard becomes very important, as well as other family-friendly features. But obviously in favor of the project going forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Roche.
I think you've done a good job. There's probably a couple things you can do to reduce the bulk, but I would proceed with the project as it is as soon as possible.
Thank you much. Mr. Steinling.
I will say I agree with just about everything that's been said already. I endorse it. It's a big building. There's not much you can do about a big building except to make it look a little less big. And I think that they're moving in the right direction. And I look forward to seeing the next version of this because I think that they're off to a good start. So thank you.
And before I go to my council members, I just want to make the comment that we aren't approving or disapproving the building at this point, or the waivers, or indicating that we would approve any of the waivers or any of the concessions. Please limit your comments to things you would like to see different or whatever. And so I'll start with, let's see, the vice mayor.
All right, thank you. So I'll make this real quick. I want to pick up on the bike storage, which is a little weird in my mind, to go through a lobby and down a hall and pass a, so if you can play, you might have room to, I don't want to salute, but you might be able to bring it forward, put a door and have the bikes accessing or whatever. There's a lot of things you could do with that bike storage being in a very odd place to my mind, but maybe you've got a reason for it, but we won't go into right now. I think you've done a good job balancing the private open space with quite a bit of more common space. Again, you want to be able to make some good use of that in the plaza, but the courtyard certainly just by itself sort of makes up for the shortage on private space with the Juliet versus real functional balconies. And I know you'll bring this back with the formal application, but we always look at trash and loading and how that's going to work in a large building like this. So be sure to have some details on that for us next time. And then everything the architect said about the design, you're there in terms of, you're really close in terms of the box, make it look really pretty. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you. And I want to also endorse what we heard from our commissioners on the facade and the mass of the bulking, and also from Commissioner Messenger on the landscaping and green space. So to the extent that EAH and their partners can focus on those areas, I think they would only make the project better. But I am comfortable so far with the height. I am comfortable with the parking solution being proposed. Many of our speakers raised the question about expediting this process. And I'm curious if someone could quickly just answer that timeline question. I think some of the speakers mentioned, anticipating the 4 community meetings. And so I don't know if Welton or someone on his team could quickly answer that timeline question about where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, I can, from our perspective, we'll take the feedback and again, appreciate everybody's feedback and support. I think the mention of the community meetings, again, I could be wrong, but I think they were mentioning the 2 planning commission and 2 city council meetings. So from our perspective, we're going to have to huddle up and figure out what next steps are, and work with city staff and the county to kind of figure out, okay, what's our next step? I mean, our goal obviously is to get this done and entitled as fast as possible. So we'll have to go, I'm glad we're hearing that we're off to a good start, so we don't have to start from scratch. So there'll be another iteration that KTGY will work on. We'll figure out the proper channels to float that along to the commission and council and see if we can get some additional input, maybe informally, if you will, and then plan to submit a formal application to kind of start the process, as soon as possible. So I don't want to say how fast Lily can work on this stuff. So we have to take everything, absorb it, figure out what we can do, and then kind of take it from there.
Council member, did you have more? Okay, thank you. Council member Lee Eng.
Thank you again for everything you've done and to bring the project this far. Once again, I had concerns about the driveway. I think that it's important that we are respectful to all the traffic that's coming by there and the backup that may occur. So I definitely feel it would be beneficial to have the driveway flipped on that left-hand side. I think the longer driveway would be helpful in so many ways, as far as having a proper loading zone, having proper queuing opportunities. The other thing is the concern about the bulk and mass of the building. I think it's, I hope you can revisit the modular sizings. I know that it can be done, and each time we say that it's development does not set a precedent, unfortunately it does. And then other buildings start to kind of pick up on everything that we've allowed. So I just would like to, I know it's important for us to be respectful to our neighbors, and I think also not to set a bad precedent. So also I'm concerned about the lack of green space like everyone else stated. So if as much as possible, we can have more green in your courtyard as well, or consider looking at something, providing more green opportunities there. So, but thank you again.
Is that it? Councilmember Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Welton and your team at EAH for bringing this as far forward as you have. And thank you also very much to my colleagues, to the Planning Commission, and to our residents who have commented tonight. I think that there were some very important and useful comments. My biggest concern with the project, I think, has to do sort of with the coloring. In looking at sheet A0.3, I love the look of the mass timber on the ground floor. And I understand and I like sort of the silvery fins that are out there and the placement designed to sort of block the late afternoon sunshine from going into the units. I do think though that their charcoal coloring is going to absorb an awful lot of heat. If in a perfect world, if I could make one change with a magic wand, I would love to see this building have a green roof. I think that more and more green roofs in Los Altos would be a tremendous benefit to our community. But I also understand that that's probably not compatible with having PV cells up on top. If there was a way to make it more green, I would support that. In looking at sheet A03, there's not a lot of landscaping in front of the building along the Stell. I'd like to see more, especially with all that charcoal stone on floors 2 through 4. I do think that the resident from 5000 El Camino Real brought up some important points about parking. And this is not necessarily an issue for the applicant to consider, but if it turns out that that there is a need for more parking, I think that it is incumbent upon the council to take a look at our city's parking requirements and sort of tackle that and see what we can do, not only to make sure that we are preserving the livability of this community, but preserving the livability of our entire city as we see more and more dense projects being built throughout the city. Finally, I would love to see this project move forward as fast as possible. I think that the most important and salient comments tonight have been that there are families that are looking for a home. There are families that need a place to live, and the more we delay, the longer we are keeping these people from having a place that they can call home. We're keeping them from being our neighbors, our citizens, and contributing to our community. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add that I think one of the benefits of this meeting is that we may not need to take 2 meetings at Planning Commission and 2 meetings at City Council to get this approved. So I think we all have that same goal. I'll just add the following. I love the wood. I think it's one of the most wonderful features about this project. I will echo and endorse everything that Commissioner Ahi said. He's always right on with his observations on what makes a good project even better, and especially the corners for stepping in the corners on the 5th floor and doing things with either articulation or materials or color that will help reduce the mass would be great. Reductions in bulk, in actuality or appearance is a very big deal. It's probably one of the biggest things that our residents care about. So I know you'll give good consideration to that. A place for move-in trucks, delivery trucks, and getting that off the street and in a safe way to for the families that are living there, as well as for others who use that street. Very important, much better than having it on El Camino for that purpose, but let's be sure that we've got that incorporated in addition to what Councilmember Meadows mentioned about, trash and all that. Really, really, move-in trucks are going to be a big deal here, and delivery trucks. The landscaping, although our code calls for, permeable materials or landscaping, I want to encourage your landscape folks to do as much green as possible. Living things, in my mind, since we do have the proposal with, or may have a proposal with less setback and less room for landscaping, the more that's actually living green stuff, the better. We do need a parking plan. How is parking going to be managed? Probably the hottest button other than height, bulk, and mass in our community is the fear that there will be overflow parking going into the neighborhood. And so wanting to know how parking is going to be assigned and managed and kept out of the other parts of the neighborhood is going to be very important coming forward. A construction plan that minimizes the impact on others in the area, very important. And that would be the end of my comments. And I'm going to give the applicant 3 minutes to wrap up. It's all yours, Weldon.
Thank you again. I'll try not to even take the 3 minutes. I definitely want to thank everybody for showing up today, the community for its support, and the council and commission for its comments. And definitely Laura and Rada for working through the month of December to get up to speed and get us to this study session. So really, I think they if they don't get enough credit, they do from us. So we think that they did a very good job at picking all of this up and getting us here today. So we definitely have our homework. I do just want to make a plug, as a nonprofit developer, that cost is very important as we use untraditional resources to fund these developments. So in addition to what we already have with the land and the funds that the county has committed, and also the fee waivers from the city council, we really have to make sure that while we are trying to integrate everything that we're hearing here today, we need to try to make sure that we keep cost in the forefront for us, because these competitions that we have to compete for these funds, cost is a factor in that, and a lot of it is out of our control. So I just want to make that small mention that it's not that we don't want to do this stuff, but we do have to kind of make sure that we're balancing the needs of the community and the fact to actually get it built. So with that, I will thank you. We have taken copious notes, and we will see you all as soon as possible.
And I'm sure that if you wanted to reach out individually to anyone who spoke today, they would all be happy to help you, all toward the goal of getting this moving as quickly as possible through the system. So thank you all much, and we will stand adjourned, and council will take a 5-minute break before we reconvene in our closed session. Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.